Great. Good evening. I wanted to welcome you to the first GW Safety and Security Forum, and I'm going to be your moderator this evening. My name is Lindsay Belshea, and I'm looking forward to this event to serve as an opportunity to discuss safety and security issues and topics that are on your mind. We do hope that you'll use this forum as a vehicle for seeking community input and also feedback. In addition to the folks who are here in person, I'd like to also welcome our folks who are joining us online through our live video stream. And just to set some expectations for this evening, we're going to start actually with some introductory remarks by President Knapp. We'll have a brief presentation by Darrell, our Senior Associate Vice President for Safety and Security, and that'll be followed by a question and answer with our panel, who I'll introduce in just a few minutes. So let me just take a moment to ask President Knapp to stand up here and welcome the group to the forum.
Thanks very much, Lindsay. Thank you very much. And I have actually a competing event this evening, so I'm going to have to move on in a few moments. But I did want to be here, at least for the beginning of this forum, so I could underscore the significance of this discussion to the university and also just provide a little bit of framing context for it. You know, when I first arrived on campus here, which was back in the fall of 2007, one of the very first things I did was to launch a task force on safety and security. And one of the reasons I did that was that, a number of reasons, but one of them was that previous spring we had had the tragedy of the shootings at Virginia Tech, and there was a pretty substantial report with a number of recommendations that had been produced as a result of that terrible episode. And one of the consequences of that was that there was a list of something like 100 recommendations that came out of a panel that had reviewed what happened there. And what I wanted to do was to make sure that we compared our practices and policies here at George Washington with what was recommended and just to see where we stood. And so we went through that process. It actually ended up being a succession of 2 studies. And one of the results of it, one of the very important results of it, was a pretty significant reorganization of safety and security here at George Washington that involved, among other things, creating the office of our Senior Associate Vice President for Safety and Security. We were very fortunate to be able to recruit Darnell, who at that time was actually working for a slightly different kind of president a little down the street here. He was actually in the White House at the time. We were able to identify him and persuade him to join us. And I think he's done a tremendous job in moving us forward in a number of areas of safety and security. We also were able to recruit a police chief, Chief Hay, who's here. And I think he's also been continuing very much in the spirit of the recommendations that we received, not only from our internal task force, but from an external consultant that we engaged to take a look at to review all of our safety and security procedures, practices, policies. But we've been continuing on that, and I think we still have some challenges. You know, with a large, complex organization like this, with 25,000 students, thousands of employees, multiple campuses, and, you know, a neighborhood surrounding us that is itself rather complex in terms of the combination of hotels and government agencies and non-government agencies and residences. It is a complex picture. We have multiple police jurisdictions that intersect on our campus, 4 or 5 different jurisdictions, I suppose, that are here between the Capitol Police, the Secret Service Police, the Metropolitan Police, our own police department, Park Police. So it is a complex communication challenge for us to be able to have a sense of how we can best make sure that we provide the education for our students, staff, and faculty that will enable them to secure their own safety, that we can at the same time have in place the technology and the procedures and the protocols that will enable us to communicate in a rapid and effective way with our constituents whenever an emergency arises. And of course, we had a pretty dramatic instance of the challenges that we face in that regard when we had that earthquake that happened right before the beginning of our semester. And as a result of that, we launched a new study, and we've got some new technological advances that we're going to be able to introduce. Because one of the things we discovered there was how difficult it was to communicate through some of the media that we had been using for issuing alerts and other kinds of communication. At the same time, we've been looking at the way we protect the campus in terms of the placement of security officers in different locations, and I think that's another aspect that's going to be discussed this evening. So again, there's a lot going on. We constantly need to continue improving and paying attention to this. There is no higher priority for our university than the safety and the security of all the members of our community. Nothing takes precedence over that. Whatever other projects we're involved in, whatever other initiatives we may undertake, whatever other aspirations we may be trying to achieve, our fundamental priority and always the first job for all of us is safety and security of the members of our community. That's why I'm here, at least to be here for the beginning of this discussion, and I'm glad you're here, whether you're participating online through the video conferencing or whether you're here in person, and a number of you are. For those online, you may not be able to see them, but we do have both a live and a virtual audience here, and I think that we really need your feedback. I understand that we've already gotten more than a dozen questions from our online viewers, and so they're participating actively in this. Our job here is to listen to your questions and comments and advice, but also to make sure you have the most advanced information about the thinking of the leaders assembled at this panel, who are the ones charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the safety and security of our community is protected in the strongest possible way. So thank you all for being here this evening, and I hope you both enjoy and profit from tonight's conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, President Knapp. Again, I want to make sure you understand that our intention is to make this a very interactive event, and there's several ways you can participate tonight. For those of you who are here in person, we'll invite you to come up to the microphones that are placed around to ask your questions directly to the panel. We also have cards that you were given when you came in. If you'd like to fill in your questions and pass them to the side, we'll make sure that they bring them up to me. And for those of you who are joining us online, you can continue to submit questions from the website. And as President Knapp mentioned, we already have several questions that have been submitted. So before we get to the Q&A, I wanted to introduce our panelists and then also ask Darrell to come and give a brief presentation. So let me start first with our panelists. As mentioned, Darnell is our Senior Associate Vice President for Safety and Security, and he has joined us back in 2010 and came, as President Knapp mentioned, from the White House. Next to him, we have Peter Konwerski, who is George Washington's Senior Associate Vice President and Dean of Students for the Division of Student and Academic Support Services. And Dr. Konwerski has held numerous positions here at the university for more than 19 years as a student, faculty member, and senior administrator. We have Chief Hay, who has joined us as the chief of the George Washington University Police Department. And that is a department that's comprised of over 175 employees, 115 of which are special police officers and security officers who are licensed by the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department. And as mentioned, I believe before, Chief Hay joined us from the United States Park Police and has over 28 years of law enforcement experience. Next to him, we have George Nunez, who is the director of the Office of Emergency Management and has been involved in emergency management in higher education for over 12 years. And Mr. Nunez is also an active member of the International Association of Emergency Managers, which is IAEM, and currently chairs the Emergency Management Committee of the Consortium of Universities of the Washington Metropolitan Area. And finally, we have William Flint, who is our director of the Office of Health and Safety, and he joined the George Washington University community in April of 2011. And prior to joining GW, he worked for the District of Columbia Fire and EMS Department as the Deputy Fire Chief of the Safety and Wellness Division. So I'd like to turn over the podium to Darnell, who's going to give us an overview of safety and security here at GW. Thank you, Darrell.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, President Knapp. Thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you all who are online and listening to this. Hopefully, we'll have a good interactive evening. As Lindsay said, I just want to start by giving you a basic overview of safety and security here. As President Knapp said, some of the recommendations that came out of the various committees was to really try to leverage the resources that we have at George Washington University. We've done some good things prior to me coming here, Chief Hay and some of the other people that you see on this panel, but we can always do better. And so the thought was, let's take all of our public safety agencies, put them all under one umbrella, if you will, leverage those resources, integrate them better, coordinate them better, so that we can achieve a safe and secure campus community. And so I'd like to just take a few moments before we get into the question and answer period and sort of explain to you what we've done over the last year and a half or so. And I think I can make this work. I can't see the slide, so I'm not sure. Okay, thank you. So really just to start with the mission of the university, of the office, and it's really just to provide a safe and secure campus for the university. But what I really like to say to you, the second part of this, what you're seeing up on the screen, is really the most important part. It's the active participation of everyone in the GW community. I have never been a part of any safety and security endeavor that's been successful if the community wasn't a part of that as well. And that's really what tonight is about, is to solicit your feedback, to make you a part of this, to get your ideas, to get your suggestions, because at the end of the day, we're only as safe and secure as all of us are being a part of this effort. As Lindsay indicated before, the office is made up of 3 primary offices: the Office of Emergency Management, the Office of Health and Safety, and then the University Police Department, the George Washington Police Department. Oh, okay, thank you. The Office of Emergency Management is really the office that's responsible for the overall coordination of the safety and security units. They're responsible for the incident management, developing and conducting exercises to test our plans, to test our training, to make sure that our policies are in line with what we want to achieve. They're also responsible for the primary outreach. You saw a little bit of that as you walked in tonight with some of the folks out at the table, where they were distributing literature, those different types of things. They set up the safety fairs that we have several times a year. They communicate with our outside agencies, a principal agency for communicating with the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency within the District of Columbia, our Neighborhood Planning Commission, which is a consortium of all of our partners in the Foggy Bottom area, where we exchange ideas, we train together, we plan together, and we talk about big events. For example, when we have the IMF, the World Bank meetings and those types of things, it's their responsibility to coordinate with those entities to make sure that George Washington is represented, and we're in tune with what their plans are. The GW Police Department, run by Chief Hay, it's a police department that's fully accredited by the Commission on Accreditation and Law Enforcement Agencies, and also by the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Agencies. I start with that because I think that's very important. Only 1% of university police departments in the country achieve that accreditation. So we have a department that we think is very good and recognized by an independent agency, and I think we'll be coming up next month for our reaccreditation. They do a lot of different things. They're responsible for maintaining the blue light phones, emergency phones that you see on campus, managing 4-Ride, eMERGE, residence hall security, and access control at our departmental buildings. As Lindsay indicated, they have a staff of about 115 security officers and special police officers. The special police officers are certified by the Metropolitan Police Department here in the District of Columbia. Those officers go through an intensive 6-week academy training. They get over 240 hours worth of training before they can become full-fledged officers. The Office of Health and Safety, as Lindsay indicated, is run by William Flint. William Flint comes to us from the District of Columbia Fire and EMS Service, where he was a deputy chief. He and I had the pleasure of working together before I came here as well. He is very well versed in the 2 areas that you see here with environmental and occupational health and safety inspections. Just to sort of make a little light of this, he is the guy who is looking for your illegal extension cords in your dormitory rooms, residence hall rooms. But he also does a lot of other great things as well, as you can see. What I'd like to do is talk about a few things that have come up as I've talked with students going around campus. Students have emailed me things we've heard over the last week or so, quite frankly, to really give you, I hope, a better understanding or a clear understanding of why we do some of the things we do. And I want to start with the Clery Act and timely warning, talk a little bit about the emergency notification process, some of the things that we're doing with residence hall security, the threat assessment team, 4-Ride, and finally, see something, say something. Going back to where I started with my first slide, safety and security is really a community effort, and we really need all of you to, if you see something illegal, say something. Call the police, call someone in charge, someone in authority, and let us know what's going on, and we'll talk about that a little bit more and give you some formal ways in which you can do that. For those of you who may not know, The Clery Act is a law that was passed in 1990, and it basically talks about how universities are responsible for notifying their community whenever there's a threat to the community. And as it says here, the institution is required to immediately notify the campus community upon confirmation of a significant emergency or dangerous situation involving an immediate threat to the health and safety of students or employees occurring on campus. Confirmation means that an institution official or officials has verified that a legitimate emergency or dangerous situation exists. And in most cases, that's probably going to be the chief of police or someone who is in my particular position. And there are two types of notification. There's the immediate notification and there's the timely warning. The immediate notification is required if we think, as it suggests, if there is immediate threat to the life or safety or well-being of anyone on the George Washington campus. And typically what we try to do is we try to verify that there actually is a credible threat. And once we verify that there's a credible threat and there is immediate danger to someone or a threat, then we will send out that notification as quickly as we possibly can. The timely notice is a different category in which probably it refers more to if a natural incident, there's a hurricane, if we think there's an approaching storm, if we have a power outage, those different types of things where we try to put out a timely notice so that you can take whatever preventive or protective measures that you need to take. The Clery Act also requires that we put out an annual security report, and that report has to be out by the 1st of October of each year, and we're required to publish our crime statistics for the previous 3 years. So this year's report covers 2008, 2009, and 2010. Again, as you were walking in this evening, we had copies of that report out on the table if you'd like to take a look at it. It's also available on our website, or you can go to the Woodhull House, and request it, and our officers will print a copy out for you. We also have a daily crime log. One of the questions that I get asked often is, I didn't know about this, you guys didn't send out a warning. There are some things, again, that don't fall into that category of a immediate alert or immediate warning or a timely notice, but we publish that crime log on a daily basis. That crime log is published in the Hatchet, it's published on our website, and again, you can stop by the police department and they'll give you a copy of that as well. I kind of like to walk through the emergency notification process a little bit. And again, as I said before, the key to this is determining if there's a credible threat. So if we receive information is received by safety and security. It could be me, it could be the chief of police, it could be one of our officers who's walking on their beat, it could be any university official. This information is then, again, we determine if it's a threat to the university, we draft a message for dissemination, and then that message is disseminated through various means, and I'll kind of walk through that, here we go, through various means. We have our campus advisories, which is a website. Generally speaking, we're not going to put timely warnings or immediate warnings on immediate warnings on our campus advisory. That's more of a passive system in which you have to go to the website and seek out that information. So generally, we'll put information on the campus advisories. Our most recent posting is, for example, was a posting of the emergency alert system that was tested. I believe it was yesterday, George, or yesterday. So that's the type of information that we would put on the campus advisory. The GW alert text messaging, that's where we would primarily send our immediate warnings out, because that's the quickest way that we can get in touch with you. And suffice it to say, we had some problems with that last week with the incident over Halloween. We think that we fixed that problem, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. We have the blast email system, or otherwise known as InfoMail, which you all are probably most familiar with. And then we have the GW Alert desktop application, which you've probably seen the red scroll that goes across the bottom when we test it to alert you that something is going on. What you need to know about this particular method right here is that you have to be on a GW network computer, or you have to have downloaded that program to your own personal computer to get that information. And then we also utilize social media such as Facebook and Twitter. There's been a lot of discussion about residence hall security, and over the past few months, we've been working with Peter and his staff to really come up with a better way that we can protect you in the residence halls. And so what we've done is I had asked Chief Hay to go back and take a look at some of our crime trends, calls for service. So we went back and we took a look over a 5-year period where we had the most calls for service, where we had the most incidents for crimes, and we came up with a plan that we think balances the need to make sure that we have officers out on patrol to cover our campus, but also cover the residence halls where we think there's the greatest need. So as you can see from this slide up here, we're going to continue to provide 24-hour coverage at Thurston and Potomac, at City Hall, Mitchell, Madison, Crawford, Amsterdam, Ivory Tower, and Lafayette. Security officers will be on duty from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And at Fulbright, West End, JBKO, South Hall, Dakota, International House, and Guthridge, we'll have community service advisors on duty from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. And we'll continue with officer patrols at Hova, Ashton, 1959, and so on, and the rest. At the Mount Vernon campus, security will continue to remain the same. We have officers there on duty every day, a minimum of 3 officers, and those officers patrol the campus and respond to calls as needed. We think the plan that we put in place provides a good balance between keeping our patrols, being able to respond to calls for service, but at the same time, putting a person at the entrance of residence halls to keep the bad people out. I think the great thing about this plan as well is that this plan is flexible. Again, it's based on trends and analysis. Twice a week, Chief Hay and his officers, they monitor the calls for services, the trends, they do an analysis. And so if the trends show that we need to move our officers around, we can change this plan and put them where we need the officers. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the threat assessment team. The threat assessment team is comprised of representatives from our law enforcement, student and academic affairs, human resources, general counsel, counseling and mental health services, and the threat assessment team is put together to address potential threats. Anytime that you think that there's a potential threat, whether it's somebody within the GW community, off the campus, and those different types of things, we'd like for you to notify GWPD. If you see threatening or suspicious behavior, you can also call our anonymous tip line. And what we'll do is we'll send an officer to initially investigate the complaint. This is a very fluid and agile group that we can get together and we can meet either in person or by conference call and make decisions immediately. We've done it a number of times to assess what people have thought was threatening behavior, and depending on the circumstances, we'll take the necessary action. And it's really here to make sure that we can prevent things from happening before they get out of hand, or worse, cause something very devastating or harmful to our campus community. 4Ride. This is our security service for late night transportation around campus, and I would like to emphasize security service and not a taxi service, quite frankly, and it's designed to provide a service to you if you feel like it's late at night or for whatever reason you feel uncomfortable walking back to your residence hall or the library or those different types of things. We upgraded the system. You can now make reservations online. You can book trips up to 2 hours in advance beginning at 6:30 p.m. in the evenings, and you can also receive an email or text notification when the shuttle is on the way to pick you up, but please, you have to request that at the time of the request to get that to occur. We think this system is getting better. We first implemented it at the beginning of this semester. The latest statistics that I've received, this past weekend on November 5th, I believe it was, we had 186 requests for a ride. 170 people used the online service to request a ride. So we think that's working very well. It gives you another option. It's more efficient. You spend less time. One of the complaints that I received from students when I got here was they could never get through on the landline. They would be waiting and waiting and waiting. Then they had no idea when the van would pick them up. The anecdotal evidence that we've gotten so far in some of the reports, the formal reports, would suggest that we're getting a lot better than that. And our goal is to be able to pick you up within 15 minutes of your requested time. So I think we're getting better and better with that every day. But again, I would like to again emphasize that this is a security service, and it's more efficient and it's better for everyone if you use it for that service and not other uses. And finally, I'd like to wrap up with the see something, say something. Again, safety and security is a community effort. If you take a look at law enforcement studies that have been done by agencies such as the Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Service, the Police Executive Research Forum, and they've done studies, and they show that when communities and neighborhoods get invested and engage with police, with safety and security officials, crime decreases, safety goes up, neighborhoods become safer, communities become safer. It really does take a full effort on everyone's part. Officers can't be everywhere. We don't see everything. We don't hear everything, but you see things, you hear things in the community, and we really need your assistance in helping us with that. You can report unusual suspicious activity at GWPD, or you can call 911. What I would encourage you all to do is program our emergency number into your phone. That way, if you see something, you can quickly just hit that button and you can get our emergency line. You can also report anonymously, as I've talked about earlier. You can check out some of our crime prevention program and resources. We have self-defense classes, we have an adopt an officer program, and then we have our 24/7 sexual assault crisis consultation team. You can stay informed by checking our campus advisory and our safety and security message, our email and alerts. And I believe I've talked enough, and that's the end of my presentation. But there's just some more contact information where you can reach us. And I'm still getting used to this Twitter thing, so bear with me if I don't respond right away. But I'm proud to say that I have 89 followers, so hopefully you guys will start following me a little bit more. Thank you.
Again, we're going to move to our interactive portion of tonight's forum. I want to remind you, for those of you who are live in our audience, we have a microphone for which you can stand up and ask our panel questions directly. Again, you've got those cards. If you want to pass them to the side, we'll have one of our helpers bring those up to me. And of course, we've got some questions that have already been submitted online. And for those of you joining us online now, you can continue to submit those questions through the website, and those will be brought up. To kick things off, I'm going to go ahead and start with one of the questions that was submitted earlier online, and again, give our audience here some time to formulate some additional questions. Let me actually put the first question to George Nunez. As we know, our GW students are extremely politically active, so I'm not surprised to see this question. Is there a specific plan in place to heighten security during events in and around the Foggy Bottom area? Especially with upcoming elections and future inaugurations, there's going to be increased amount of people in the area. Can you speak to GW's preparation for that?
Sure. Actually, Darrell in his comments mentioned the word partnerships, and that's really key. Being that we are in such an active neighborhood, we work very closely with our neighbors. That includes our Metropolitan Police Department, the DC Homeland Security and Emergency Management Agency, and GW actually provides staffing when the Emergency Operations Center is opened. So, for example, for the inauguration, for other special events, the World Bank and annual meetings that occur and other events in the neighborhood, we work with those partners to ensure that there is a coordinated effort, whether it is for messaging, for preparedness, making sure, for example, that life here at GW is not necessarily interrupted because there are other activities going on.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and ask another question that's been submitted online. Again, our live studio audience is welcome to the microphone at any time. Let me go ahead and give this question. I'm not sure who's the most appropriate, so let me ask it and look to the panel here. This was a question that was actually submitted from a parent, and there's concern that the GW University Police Department has a long delay in responding to fire alarms and smoke detectors that are activated in dorm rooms. Just wondering if you could share how the university monitors those response times, and do you feel that the university is adequately responding?
I'll take that, Lindsay. The police department, I looked at some stats not too long ago. The period of July through June, a 12-month period, we responded to over 1,268 incidents where there was smoke involved. Of those, well over 60% had to do with cooking. Sometimes what happens is someone will hear an alarm go off and they expect an immediate response. But what can happen is quite often when someone burns a bag of popcorn or puts that pizza box in the oven, they'll give us a call and say, "Oh, sorry, my bad." And so we know that there's not exactly a real emergency, and we'll if we're busy doing other things, we may take a little while before we get up there. But for the most part, we respond lickety-split, and we get on the scene pretty quickly.
Great. I believe we've got a question from our audience.
Thank you. My name is Tim Savoy. I'm a senior in the School of Public Health and Health Services. And my question is for anyone on the panel, in regards to this past Halloween weekend. And my question is, do you feel that the GW student population overreacted to the situation that happened in Georgetown and that spilled over onto campus? And if so, what do you think that the student population can do in the future to, we've already heard about how to stay informed, but not to overreact in the situation. If anyone was on any sort of social media that night, Twitter, Facebook, you saw a lot of students who had very kind of polarized views about what the university was doing right or wrong about the situation. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Sure.
No, I don't think they overreacted. I think it was a natural reaction because we weren't getting enough information out as quickly as we would have liked to. I think it's been well documented why we couldn't do that, so I won't go into that again. But I think that we have a system in place, and I think some of you received some of the test email and text messages that we sent out last week to test this new system. So we think we have a system that's more reliable. We think it's faster. And so, no, I don't think they would overreact. The only thing that I would say to the student population is that we can't react sometimes as quickly as you can react on Twitter. It's usually a one-on-one transaction when you all are on Twitter, where we're trying to put out information to 25,000 people. And with that comes a responsibility to not only put the information out in a timely manner, but also make sure that that information is accurate as we possibly can. So that's the balance that we're trying to strike, because it would be a much bigger problem if we just, in a rush to just get information out to satisfy people, we put out wrong information. That's worse than not putting out any information at all.
Thank you.
Great. Let me take another question that was submitted online here and related to the previous question. Given the recent activities that have posed threats to the student body, have changes been made in the amount or level of security in light of these recent incidents?
Yeah, I think so. I think I kind of addressed it a little bit when we talked about the housing. I think one of the things that when it comes to safety and security, it's not a static process, it's a fluid process. One of the things that we do, and Chief Hay can jump in a little bit and talk more about his process, we have what we call a COMSTAT process. It's a tried and true process that police agencies across the country use. And what you do is you look at trends, you look at calls for service, you look at locations, you look at other environmental issues that impact on crime, and you try to mobilize your resources where you think those resources will be the most effective. And so what you're trying to do is leverage your resources, push crime out to other areas, away from your areas, and those different types of things. And so, as I said earlier, the chief does that twice a week, and that's how we sort of assess where we want to utilize our resources. Chief, I don't know if you want to add.
Sure. Last academic year, we were able to pick out patterns on 5 different types of crimes that were occurring. We had some bike thefts going on. We had some thefts from auto. And in each of those instances, we set up plainclothes surveillance in those areas based on what we were seeing on the police reports. And in all 5 operations, we were able to find the people that were stealing the bikes or breaking into the cars and get them arrested. And we were proud of that fact. The system does work pretty well. We usually have a big spike in bike thefts every September. This year, we also put out a plainclothes operation. And while we didn't make an arrest this September, bike thefts plummeted. I think the word got around to some of the fellows in the criminal in the criminal arena that we were out looking, and our bike thefts have been a lot less so far this year, so it's a good thing, and that's how it works.
And I would just add, because I think this is an important essence of this question, and it's the reason we're doing this town hall tonight. These guys, I'm between the 2 safest guys on campus, so I can say this. I've learned a lot, but they talk about community policing, which is a community responsibility. They also talk about the concept of a force multiplier. And the concept of a force multiplier is everyone in this room is actually able to participate in this process. I mean, we think about that in terms of the residence life staff. There are 100 of you plus living in the residence halls. every student who's watching out for something, as Darrell said, if you see something, it doesn't necessarily even have to be criminal. It could just be something that you don't think is the right, it doesn't have the right feel. There's another, look, your eyes and ears, we've doubled the number of eyes and ears just by talking with you and talking to the other people that you're living with. So your roommates, your friends, professors, staff, housekeepers, everyone is part of that security platform. And while we have the men in blue who are protecting us, the women and men in blue, we also have all of you who are really advocates for that preparation. What you see will help inform what they can do.
Great point. I believe we've got a question from our audience.
It's less of a question and more of a two-part feedback. My name's Elizabeth. I'm a house proctor in Thurston. It's my second year in the position, so I've spent quite some time working with safety and security in my role as a house proctor. Chief Hay, I remember you talking to us, at our training, telling us that the house proctors really are the first line of defense, which I agree with. And as part of my feedback, I would just like to say that in my role, I've been continually impressed when I've worked with UPD as a house proctor. Their responses are always swift, and they've been incredibly supportive. I've had them this year and last year. I've had some pretty contentious situations with residents, and every time University Police showed up to assist me, they were more than professional and more than helpful to me in the moment. But kind of jumping off of that, you said that you have a very good partnership with Metro Police, which is something that as a student I'm glad to hear. But I'd just like to provide a little feedback about my personal interactions with Metro Police as a house proctor. I'm sure you remember the Thurston gas leak that just happened. In our roles as house staff, we were all there with our emergency vests on. We're helping to direct our residents out of the dorm, helping to direct them to the Marvin Center, answering questions. And I really think that, speaking as a member of the team that worked there, we did a really great job in clearing the area. When Metro Police got there, and we were visible as not students, we all had our emergency vests on. When Metro Police got there was one officer who was incredibly rude to us, yelled at us for being in the way, which we actually weren't. We were helping direct traffic. When I tried to explain to him that we were, in fact, student employees that were trying to assist him, he got even more rude, even more caustic. He called me stupid. He referred to me as stupid instead of by name. And it was just a really jarring reaction and a jarring situation for myself and my fellow house staff to be in. Yeah. And then he got in his car and didn't interact with us for the rest of the situation. And so as feedback, I would just like it if maybe you could do something to impress upon Metro that, the house staff that are there, we're there to help. We're not there as students that are rubbernecking and trying to see what's going on. We're there to help them, and my residents weren't leaving until I went up and told them to go to the Marvin Center. And I saw UPD officers go up and tell them to go to the Marvin Center, and they just ignored them because they're students, and sometimes you need to hear it from somebody in your house staff role. So just as some feedback, I think it could be really valuable for you to maybe go over with Metro what being a house proctor means, and when a house proctor or a house scholar or a mentor, anyone that is a house staff member is helping them out. We're not trying to make it more difficult, and if we are making it more difficult, to treat us with some respect and
Sure.
Let us know, hey, I understand that you're trying to help clear the area, but we need to do our duty as police officers. Could you maybe shift to the side? But being rude to us isn't going to help anything. It made me want to walk away from the situation and walk away from my role because I was just fed up with it. So, thank you.
That's really regrettable that you had that experience, particularly during an incident that had some danger to it, while the gas was still leaking. I talk with Commander Mike Reese on a regular basis. He's the commander of the 2nd Police District for Metro, and that encompasses most of Northwest. Most of the Foggy Bottom campus is in the PSA Police Service area number 207, and Alicia Wheeler-Moore is the lieutenant responsible for that area, and we converse quite a bit as well. I'm very happy to report that in the last 14 months since I got here, I have gotten some really good cooperation from them. We have had some situations where officers did not act as we had hoped they would in certain circumstances, and we've been able to get those problems squared away. So if you want to talk to me afterwards and give me any additional information, like the officer's name, I'll be happy to look into that a little bit further.
I don't have his name.
Okay, that's all right. But we'll look into that anyway. I'll discuss it with Commander Reese.
Great. We actually just had a question that was submitted online from a parent, and they proposed a hypothetical question. They said, imagine you're a 110-pound, 5-foot-tall student returning at 11:45 p.m. to your dorm. No one's around. A 6-foot-tall man appears behind you as you're walking through the door. What should you do at this moment? what can we realistically expect a student to do in this situation? Is it their responsibility to protect all of the other residents in the building against the intruder?
No, and I would not want in that situation anyone to try to confront somebody like that. What I would offer that they do is try to get a good look at the person, get as best a description as they can, and get back to their room and immediately call GWPD. And that's one of the reasons why we ask you to program that phone number into your phone, that 6111 number, and we will have somebody respond. One of the issues that we do have is the issue of tailgating, quite frankly, and piggybacking. We have some incredible students, some incredibly nice students who were taught very well by their parents to hold the door and those different types of things and let folks in. And 99% of the time, that's a good thing to do. It's that one time where it could go sour on you. And so again, we don't want anyone trying to take matters into their own hands or to confront anyone. But if you think it's suspicious, if it doesn't look right to you, when you get back to your room, call us, and we'll respond, and we'll come do that. We've done that in many cases. You know, fortunately, we don't have to do it a lot, but there have been times where we've gotten those calls, and we've sent officers over there. I think the most recent case I can remember are the guys who were trying to get their restaurant business started, and they were delivering flyers in one of the residence halls, and somebody called us, and we went over there, and we checked them out.
Great. I think on that same vein, there's a question that was submitted about understanding more how your approach is to protecting students who live in our residence halls. And that's probably a question that several of you on the panel could answer.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about how we would do it from a security perspective, and we can talk some more about that. But there's also another component with the housing. I don't know, Peter, if you would like to.
I mean, I think part of this is we've been spending some time looking at this, and Kevin pulled a lot of information for us over the last few months to look at trends. I think it is important that, as Darrell said, this is a flexible model. I don't think we've gone into a lot of specifics on, when we're going to pilot this, but we look forward to rolling this out and then having you give us feedback as students, especially the residential students. What's working. We want you to eventually develop a rapport and a relationship with the person at the door. It might be a CSA, it might be an officer. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. When you think about that community policing atmosphere, you're part of that answer. You're part of that community. We want you to take ownership as much as we will to protect your experience, protect yourself. But as part of that, we know that there is already an existing presence in the residence hall. There is a residence life staff. You can go and see the residence house staff, and you can talk to them about the concerns you have. You can escalate, you can discuss, you can get feedback. In an emergency, we'd want you to call immediately. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that it is a community approach, and we're all thinking about security. We're all more conscious of security and protecting our community in whatever community or configuration you live.
And if I could jump in, when we talk about a layered system of security, what that means to you, what it should mean to you is that we do not only physical security, the things like CCTV, some panic alarms, the swipe card technology that you see, but we also have our uniformed patrols around campus. On any given shift, we've got 18 officers out that are patrolling around campus, and that's a big deterrent. The housing access monitors that the Vice President discussed earlier, we're going to go from 5 residence halls to 15 here in a short amount of time, where we've got a presence at the front door, and we think that's going to help quite a bit as well. It's a big step forward for us, and we're excited about it.
Great. I believe we've got a question from our audience.
Hello. This question is addressed to anybody who wishes to answer. My name is Andrea Ruiz, and I'm a senior at the Elliott School here at George Washington, and I'm also a house staff. My question is in regard to infrastructure and being proactive in order to ensure students' safety in the dorms. Mm-hmm. What are you doing, or what have you been looking at infrastructure in a way that you can improve it in order to make safety more of a hallmark within the residence dorms, looking at the times that doors open or stay open, and just how quickly these things happen. So for example, in the Dakota, there's a door that leads to a back alley that opens automatically and stays open for 15 minutes. And I'm sure there's little things around like that happen throughout campus. And so I'm wondering, like, what kind of proactive measures you're taking to look at these different things and find ways to improve it before before something negative happens from that. Thank you.
No, I think that's a perfect example of see something, say something. I mean, and in fact, I talked to a student who had a similar situation at Ivory Tower, where one of the doors stayed open for 15 seconds. And part of that, we have some ADA, or Americans with Disability Act compliance issues that we have to work through, that the door has to stay open an amount of time, but we can fix that. The same thing with that type of issue. I think we take a look at environmental design of buildings and those different types of things, lighting, those types of issues where we can make things a lot safer. But again, having that type of feedback, and that's something that we'll jump on right away and figure out what's going on there. That's something that we need to find a reason why and fix it. But generally speaking, one of the things that we're looking at is not just looking, as Chief Hayes said, the physical resources, but what are those other things that we can do that we can improve security. And sometimes it's just a small thing like increasing lighting, or in your particular case, there may be a logical reason why that happens, but maybe we can put more lighting back there or something else, to reduce the risk of something bad occurring.
If I could jump in terms of infrastructure, some of the improvements that you'll be seeing this winter, we just got 4 quotes on blue lights. Some of our original blue lights are over 20 years old, and they've just got the capability, when you hit the button, that you can talk to a dispatcher. The new ones that we hope to be purchasing soon will have not only CCTV on the tops of them, but they'll also have a speaker system on them so that we can put out information in a very rapid manner. Not everyone has a PDA or a smartphone that they're going to be getting emergency text on, so we want to have additional ways that we can put out information. When it comes to infrastructure, earlier Vice President Darnell talked about our four-ride and how, it's very popular. It was originally started as a security escort, and that's what it still is. It's a security escort. People are supposed to use it for security, but we all know that folks use it a lot more than that. They use it because they don't feel like walking 6 or 7 blocks. And that's unfortunate. We would ask that people do use it when they want a secure way to get from A to B. And then the system would not be as busy as it is, and we could take care of those folks a little bit better that are looking for a safe way to get home.
Just to clarify Chief's remarks on the blue lights, that process is still in the requirements and the bid process. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that next week you're going to have new blue lights. So, okay.
Great. We've got a question or a comment from the audience.
Yes, I have a question. My name is Trevor Rockhill. I'm a junior here in the School of Business. My question is more specific, and I suppose would be for Chief Hay to answer. My question is, what's the protocol for GWPD when a student reports a theft, like immediately after it happens? And the reason why I'm asking this is because last year a friend of mine was the victim of a laptop theft, and she called UPD at the time, and the first responder from GWPD didn't arrive for 20 minutes. So I just wonder what's happening in those 20 minutes. And then in your answer, I was wondering if you could speak to maybe your partnership with MPD in these types of situations. Because after UPD had arrived, MPD arrived as well, and it was a mix, like kind of a mixed operation, like they were both doing things. So just to reiterate, why did it take 20 minutes for somebody to come to speak to her? What was happening in those 20 minutes, possibly?
Sure. On any given shift, you can have different things that are occurring. If we're really busy, like we sometimes are Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, dispatch is extremely busy. The phone's ringing quite a bit, and the dispatcher's putting out calls to the various officers via the radio, one right after the other. So when we get really busy, you may not get an officer right away, especially for something like a theft where the exigency is over. I take it in that situation, the person had come and gone, and all they knew was that their property was gone. Is that right?
Yeah, what had happened was they had taken her laptop,
In a lot of instances where if something, the more serious something is, the quicker we hope to get there. And it's almost like triage. You know, we're going to take the hottest, most important calls and apply our officers accordingly. MPD, we call them in on a lot of cases because they want to be aware of the crime trends as well. We take a report because we are required to for Cleary. They wanted to have it for the city stats as well. So we share and do a lot of collaborative work together. In fact, I mentioned some of our plainclothes operations earlier this year. For the first time, they've been sending people to assist us with some of those programs. So that's a great move in the right direction.
Great. Let me go back to more questions that have been submitted, and this one I think would be for William Flint. According to an article in the Hatchet, safety and security can ban smoking in areas with flammable materials or where there's an air quality risk. So why can't smoking be banned within a certain distance from the main entrances to, let's say, Gelman, residence halls, and other GW buildings?
Well, it can, and it is. In certain circumstances, we work with the building management to make sure that if there is a problem with indoor air quality, that we do get the areas posted and smoking prohibited. DC law gives us that opportunity, and we take advantage of it when we do. But we work within the smoking policy, and it's only an opportunity. It's not a university-wide ban.
Thank you. Question or comment from the audience?
Hello, my name is Stacy Minton. I'm a senior in the School of Business. I want to go back to the fire alarm issue. I would like to know why it works how it does. My understanding is that if there's smoke in one room and it only activates one smoke detector, there's only a small fire alarm that goes off in the main entrance, and then a UPD officer comes. And then if the whole system goes off, only UPD responds and not the fire department. I have an antidote if you would like to hear it about the smoke detector going off, but I'd just like to hear some of your response to that.
We have a lot of different buildings, and some of the systems are newer and some of the systems are older. We always respond when we get a fire alarm. We also get trouble alarms. There's a range of different alarms that we get, but we'll always respond, and we try and get there as quick as we can.
Because my antidote is on Parents' Weekend. Me and my parents just happened to be standing outside waiting for 4-ride, and the alarm was going off. My dad happens to be in the alarm business, so he went over and looked at what it was, and it was a trouble going off. And so he said, why isn't the alarm going off? Because that's how he programs it in the schools he works with. So he actually called UPD because no one had arrived within 5 minutes of it going off. It then took an additional 10 minutes for a UPD officer to arrive, which then in that instance, UPD officer happened to be walking by. My dad called him over and said, there's an alarm going off. Can you please tell me what's going on? The UPD officer said, it's no problem, and walked away without responding anymore. Then another car came by that was a UPD officer and came out because he saw us standing there, and my dad had actually called 911 as well, but that's because he thought something was wrong and needed help. So they saw the fire truck, he happened to stop. He wasn't even the one that called. So it's 15 minutes that nobody had come, and that's just troubling to me because I know it was in 1957 E Street. I live in a single, and the way I understand it is if one smoke detector goes off, then that's how the trouble goes. But in the single, there's only one smoke detector, and then there's a metal piece at the bottom of my door. So if the smoke hadn't left my door to activate another smoke alarm, it could have been a problem for me or anyone else in that building.
Well, I remember this case, and we actually emailed your father, Mr. Minton, on that. Officer Watts handled that case, and we had received other information that would not have been apparent to you just standing there on the curb. We had gotten some phone calls on that as well, I believe. I don't remember all the specifics, but I knew we were there and we did respond. Was there something specific that I didn't answer that you wanted?
It's mostly just troubling to a student that it would take 15 minutes for somebody to get there. And if we had a problem, that the answer was, oh, you don't understand.
No, that, in that case, I'm fairly certain that was a couple of weeks ago, but that was a trouble alarm. It wasn't a smoke alarm. And we knew what that issue was, I believe, based on some phone calls we had received. I'd have to go back and look at the emails to be certain, but I'm fairly sure that was the case.
Great. There was a question that was also submitted asking about security threats being present on the Mount Vernon campus compared to Foggy Bottom campus. So what security measures are being taken that are different out on the Vern?
Yeah. This book here, if you want to grab a copy on the way out, if you don't have one already, you can look at the statistics for Foggy Bottom and compare them to Mount Vernon, and you see there's a pretty stark difference. We're in a safe neighborhood here. The Vern is really safe. There's not a lot happening up there, but even so, we do have someone posted in the gatehouse at all times to take calls from any resident who's got a concern. We've got 3 personnel working there on all shifts 24/7, a minimum of 3. We're about to move from the gatehouse over towards Ames Hall. We've got a new facility in there that's about to come online, which is going to give us a little bit more room. We're happy about that. Mount Vernon's the same as here. We've got cameras. We've got the card swipe technology in certain places, and we've got a good staff up there. So I think it's probably one of the safest places you could be.
Yeah, we just put a slide up on the screen kind of showing some of the campuses, and if you notice, there are a lot of zeros on Mount Vernon. As the chief said, there's not a whole lot going on up there, and we hope it stays that way.
The only place safer than that is the Virginia campus, which is really bucolic.
Great. Okay, let me go ahead and go to another question that was submitted online. And this would probably be a good question for Darrell. What have you done to explore the possibility of letting at least some of the officers be armed?
You know, we've conducted several studies on that issue, and quite frankly, the security situation, it doesn't warrant it. We talked a little bit about the crime on Mount Vernon, but even if you look at the crime that we have occurred here, it doesn't require that level of force for us to adequately deal with that. And we're constantly monitoring that to make sure, as I talked about earlier, that we're taking a look at crime trends, we're doing our due diligence and our analysis and those different types of things. And the empirical evidence just does not warrant that. I'm often asked, well, what about situations like Virginia Tech and those different types of things? And I think that's where, as a community, it comes in. If you take a look at what happened in Tucson early this year with Jared Loeffner, if you take a look at what happened at Virginia Tech, if you take a look at what happened in Northern Illinois, there were people that knew that those individuals had problems. There were people that could have reported those individuals, and that's why it's so important that we have our threat assessment team, and that if you have suspicious behavior, report it. I would much rather you report something that turns out to be nothing than it turns out to be something worse than that. We have no problems following your lead. And I can't tell you what suspicious behavior is or what behavior is that you think may be a little weird. You're going to have to say that. You're going to have to figure that out yourself. The only thing I would say to you is, if your instincts tell you something is wrong, your instincts are probably right, and follow your instincts. Pick up the phone and give us a call. You can do it anonymously. No one will ever have to know but us, and we will follow that lead. We get anonymous phone calls all the time. We get them for loud noise in the dormitory. We get them from all, in the residence halls. We get them from all different types of things. And so again, it takes all of us in this effort to do that. And again, as I said, the evidence just doesn't warrant that.
Okay. We just had a question submitted from the audience. It says, after 9/11, Public Safety and Emergency Management adopted the incident command structure as per the National Incident Management System in order to avoid the same issues that were present in the 9/11 response. However, these issues were clearly present during the earthquake response. Why doesn't every senior level response personnel have training in these types of incidents, such as the corporals and sergeants in the University Police Department?
Actually, we do.
We do.
We do. All of our folks go through incident management training. We exercise and we train on a regular basis. I think what happened during the earthquake was really an anomaly in the sense that we had in most of our lifetimes had an earthquake of that magnitude in this area. Most people had never participated or had never been in an earthquake. So it was new, and how do you react to that? I think that's number one. I think number two, quite frankly, there's still, in this particular area in New York City, psychologically, we're still not completely over 9/11 in terms of what we think is happening. I know when I was in Rice Hall, people's first thought when they heard that, for me, I knew it was an earthquake. I've been in an earthquake before. I realized it was an earthquake. Other people thought we were being attacked. And I think the default for most people is, I'm getting out of the building. I'm running out. And I think that's something that, most people have in their minds. And so psychologically, we had to deal with that. But in terms of what we did, I think our incident command and system worked pretty well. We were able to get our senior leadership together as quickly as possible. We established the incident command post. Working with Chief Hay, decided he was going to take vacation and got the heck out of town. So his assistant chief, Frank Demas, took the lead in working with his officers to make sure that as much as we possibly can, recognizing that we have about 200 buildings on the Foggy Bottom campus, going building to building, trying to get people out of the building. And so I think our senior leadership got together as quickly as we possibly could. We made some key decisions right away in terms that we were going to send people home, that we were going to start the assessment process of our buildings to determine which ones, if they had any structural damage, those different types of things. So I think, given the circumstances, our incident command system worked pretty well. I will say this, it's never going to be perfect. We're never going to have perfection, and certainly there were things that we could have done a lot better, I think, and we learned some lessons from that, and we're improving our processes as a result of it. But in any catastrophic incident or something like that, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to work how the plan lays out, how the plan is laid it out, and you're going to have to be flexible, and you're just going to have to deal with the situation as it's presented to you.
In addition to that, it's important to note that not only do we utilize ICS, but we actually have trainers on staff. I mean, there's staff who are trainers from GWPD. Our office has actually been involved in the creation of ICS training that's specific to higher ed. So GW is really in the forefront of training, especially when it comes to nationwide training.
In my own defense, I was in North Carolina when the earthquake hit.
I would just add, in terms of the training, I think Darrell referred to having a plan is important, but then also the evaluation and reflection on the plan. And I think there's been conversations on things we could have done differently, could have done better, we learned from. That's the continuous improvement that we're all committed to. And I think that's one of the reasons we want to hear from you. What are we doing well? What can we improve upon? And if we can improve upon it, we'll work on it. And that was an example where Darrell talks about 100-year. I'm hoping we're not going to have another earthquake like that, but we'll be more prepared. And I personally feel I'll be more prepared to think about the things that I didn't really know going into that I do know now, because we don't live in an earthquake zone, but we have to be, we have to be aware of that. So,
if I could actually use that opportunity to make some quick plugs for stuff. We actually have several resources that are available for everyone, both online and in person. And many of you picked some of those items up. We have the Emergency Response Handbook, which was actually created with feedback received from the university community. So it doesn't cover every disaster that could ever happen, but it covers some of those significant ones that would impact the community most likely. For example, the most commonly used items would be the phone numbers, as Vice President Darnell has suggested. Please program those numbers that you would use, especially the emergency number, which goes to GWPD. It's hard to pack this in your back pocket, So we've made it convenient for you to get the miniature version. And also in here, there's a great coupon. And that coupon, we included it in there so you would keep it and use it throughout the year. And again, it's working with community partners. For example, here, it's for Capitol Grounds. They partnered with us, and it made it more efficient. And hopefully, I bet you if we asked, several of you already carry this. So again, it takes the community to really be prepared. So please take that effort to read the information beforehand, because by being prepared, when something does happen, nerves are a bit more relaxed. We're able to call, make those effective moves that we need to do. So please, take some of the information with you, share it with a neighbor or a friend, because again, it does take a community effort.
Great. I was just handed 2 questions from the audience. Let me start with the first one. And this question pertains specifically to more extensive monitoring, especially on the upper levels of Gelman. And of course, there are always expenditure and details that not everyone's aware of. But what's the prospect of getting additional cameras on populated areas such as Gelman to help prevent theft?
I think what we're doing is we're taking a look at our entire closed-circuit television or CCTV program. We have a number of cameras on campus, outdoors, in some of the buildings and things like that, and we're actually working with Gelman right now to take a look at their needs. We've done an assessment at Gelman, particularly on those top-level floors, and we hope to make some recommendations to the provost on what needs to be done. But again, security is a layered system, as the chief talked about. Again, it's not just having camera systems in place. It's really everyone having their eyes and ears open. And I don't want people to think that if you put a camera in a location, that automatically solves your potential the potential risk for a crime, because it doesn't. It's just one more tool in your toolbox to help that. But again, that said, we're looking at our camera system. And we have taken a look at that. In fact, I have a staff member who's working directly with Dr. Rayford on that issue.
We made some arrests in December where we had a pattern of laptop thefts off the upper floors of Gelman, and we set up a plainclothes operation, and we found 3 people working in concert to steal laptops, and were able to bring some of them to justice. The problem is quite often when students will leave an $1,800 MacBook on a table and leave for an hour and then come back and find it gone. Those are the types of situations where you really need to pick it up and take it with you, and that'll help us out a great deal.
Great. We've got someone standing to ask a question. Let me go ahead and turn to him.
Yeah, hi. My name is Jake. I'm currently a senior. And I just have to go back. This kind of relates to the issue we were just talking about. We were talking about Gelman. I kind of want to take it back to Eccles. I guess as someone who lived on the Mount Vernon campus for 2 years, I know that we laughed about how the Mount Vernon campus is a safer campus, but there have been thefts that have occurred in Eccles. And I myself, when I lived up on the Mount Vernon campus, that's when I've had the only theft committed against me. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if whether it's students that are going to be the biggest risk up there to themselves, like to other students, or maybe even the staff that works up there as well. Mm-hmm. But there are definitely incidents happening up there. And I still think it's strange that these thefts are happening in Eccles, but there's no swipe to get into Eccles. Eccles is like the easiest access building you could really get into at any hour of the day or night. So I was wondering if, in response to that, have you guys thought about, trying to respond to those issues, knowing that they are occurring on the Mount Vernon campus as well?
Yes, we have looked. There was a slight spike last winter at Eccles, and we put some additional manpower out there and changed some of our lockup procedures at night. We hope to improve the infrastructure out there in the future. But right now, the numbers have not called for that. That may change, and if they do, I'm sure we'll put in some additional technology and countermeasures.
Let me go ahead and ask this question that was handed to me. It actually relates to a question that was just submitted online, too. It has to do with UPD foot patrols. And Chief Hay, you mentioned that a lot of the times there might be a lag time in response because the UPD officers are very busy responding to many of the calls. There's also the the belief that there are only 18 UPD officers on walking duty around campus. And can you tell us more about the UPD foot patrols? Is there any initiative to increase the number of officers on campus? Is there an increase on weekends, et cetera? Can you tell us more about those foot patrols?
Yeah, we have 4 major beats on the Foggy Bottom campus. We have a scout car, a cruiser that's moving around. We also have officers on bicycles that are moving around that are absolutely wonderful because they can sneak up on bad guys. They're nice and quiet if they're doing something wrong. The number of officers we have out there is, for the most part, we do have a good number for this size campus, and we believe that uniform presence does a great job in getting criminals to go elsewhere. But it's only one part of the equation. I think our uniform presence is outstanding. If you ever go on the MPD website and you were to compare crime in PSA 208, which is north of Pennsylvania Avenue, and you compare that to PSA 207 where we are, it's a whole lot less right here. And I think that's due in part to the hard work of the men and women of the George Washington University Police Department being out there 24/7.
I believe we've got a question in the audience.
Yes, my name's Steve. While George was plugging the little response cards, I've noticed walking around campus in especially academic buildings, the door hangers, the hotel style, do not disturb, but they have emergency information on them. Exactly. One of the things that has occurred to me while I'm walking around is that the door handle might not be the best place for that information if an emergency does arise, especially if you're in a classroom and the person in position of implied authority, I guess the professor, standing there looking at 25, frightened students. I was wondering if, I'm sure I wouldn't be aware in the position I'm in, if anyone's considered maybe putting that information either on the academic technologies like touchscreen thing, like maybe a little panic button, like, what do I do? Or, just putting it in the podium somewhere and letting the professors know about it, because the students are going to be looking to them in the emergency if that does happen.
Right. Actually, we partner with academic affairs, for example, in including that information in people's syllabus. So even before the class starts, there's information that's presented at that time. As far as physical, the door tags were actually an initiative just to get information out and trying it our first time around. We are looking at other avenues of implementing information into the classrooms themselves. So, for example, suggestions like you suggested, we can certainly look into. But we are working with several of our university partners in posting that information. This was, again, part of an initiative that we launched at the same time that we were doing the handbook. So, obviously, some doors don't work out well, but we are looking at other venues as well.
Yeah, the other thing too is we're working to put a lot of this on the GW app. In fact, if you go on your GW app right now, you can get the locations of all 39 of the emergency lights as well. So that's the type of information, as soon as we can figure out the right format where it's not so cumbersome, we're going to put that on the GW app so you have it right at your fingertips.
All right, that's great. I thought the door knockers were awesome the first time I saw them in a residential building and then in the academic building, so it's good to see.
And campus advisories is a place where you could find a lot of this information, and including the online versions of the documents. And it's also on the GW app.
Great. Let me turn to a question that was submitted online, and I'm not sure if the panel can answer. Perhaps our audience has suggestions too. This was submitted from a staff member. What can be done about students and other people in general crossing the street without looking and using cell phones, texting, etc.? Someone's going to get hurt.
I'm going to pass on that one.
I would say, that again is a bad habit that we all have gotten into, texting while walking, being on the cell phone. I will tell you the biggest place that I see it is when you walk to the Health and Wellness Center, and one of those lights is the delayed turn. You're all shaking your heads because you know it. And we are programmed when the light changes to walk, and the reality is we just have to pay attention. There is a pedestrian safety campaign. I know some of the folks in government relations are working on that. Pedestrian safety is another element of this, like we think about in terms of other elements of safety on campus, health and wellness, fitness. But really, I think we all need to be focusing on not being so distracted. We're in a city. There are I wouldn't say dangers around us, but the things we need to be paying attention to. And I'm a victim of it. I think I text and walk and talk, and being distracted doesn't help when you're trying to pay attention to your own surroundings and things that you should be paying attention to. So that's just a good reminder that we should be doing that to reduce accidents, reduce things could happen, slips and falls. There's construction on campus. There's a lot going on this campus, and it's a relatively small footprint. So you do have to pay attention to what's around you.
Great. Let me go to another question that was also submitted online. And this has to do with, Darrell, you've mentioned many times about programming GW's emergency number into your phone. And the question is, if we call you and then you call MPD, should we just cut out the middleman and call MPD?
I think it's one of those situations where I would like for you to call GWPD. I think we have officers that can handle that situation, and I think if we need to call MPD, we could quickly get them here in a response that we would feel that would be appropriate. That said, I would never tell anyone not to call 911. If you think 911 is the best avenue for you to call, then call 911. And, MPD will respond, and when they come on campus, we will know that they're coming because we're tied into their 911 system. So if there's a 911 call from the campus, we will know about it. So we're going to partner with MPD, whether you call 911 or whether you call us. But again, I leave that to the individual to make that choice.
The Metropolitan Police have a general order for responding to incidents on campus. And Chief Lanier, she counts on us. She counts on the police departments at the various campuses, whether it's American or Georgetown or Gallaudet, each with our own police forces. And for the most part, what she tells her officers is that the university police are there. They're there to handle things. And certainly if you see a crime, take action. But for the most part, they wait until they hear from us before they're going to come on campus to take action, unless it's an obvious emergency. But we do work in close concert with them. They ask for our input on that general order, and we work collaboratively with them on that response, and I think it's working out great.
Great. There's a question that I think you may have addressed, but let me just bring it back up again. There was a question about specific plans of actions in the event of an intruder in a building or, let's say, an emergency on campus. And I know, Vice President Darnell, you spoke earlier about the different communication methods we have. And this student was really wondering, in these cases of emergencies, how do they know what to do or who to ask in the event? So I think, George, you may be able to show your flyer once more. Darrell, you may have some more information.
And that's exactly what I was going to do. I think working with Peter and his folks in housing, if you take a look at this emergency handbook, on the back page it says violence or active shooter, and it gives you steps that you can take. And again, I would encourage you all to get this. You can go online to our website to get it. You can pick it up in the back on your way out. And it gives you some steps that you can take depending on the situation. Because every situation is going to be different. I mean, we could tell you some general things to do, but they're going to be different, and you're going to have to use some of your own judgment on what to do. But again, as George had indicated earlier, read this now so you have something in your mind of what steps that you want to take. The one thing that I would tell you is to the best of your ability, don't try to confront someone if you can. Try to get yourself out of that situation, out of a dangerous situation. That's the first general advice that I would give you. But I think if you take a look at this handbook and you follow the steps in there, you pre-program those emergency phone numbers in your phone, that gives you a better chance, that reduces your risk, that it increases your chances of getting out of harm's way.
There was a recent incident that got some press at West End where an individual tailgated in late at night, and he went up on the 5th floor and just started trying doorknobs until he found an open one. And he went in, and there was a bit of a yelling match going back and forth between him and the female occupant. And when he left, she promptly called it in and gave us a good lookout, and we were able to find that individual in a pretty good amount of time. We were happy to get him into custody and to arrest him. So I would say a couple of things. You know, lock your door. These bad guys, when they are able to get in, they will go up and they will try doorknobs. And if you've left yours open while you've gone to work out or gone to get something to eat, they will go into your room and they will steal something. We hope to cut down on that quite a bit as we increase our access monitors at the residence halls. But there are some basic steps you can take to help protect yourself.
Great. I believe we have a question or comment from the audience.
Yeah, this is kind of going off of that. My name's Marissa. I live in West End. And I was just wondering, what is like the type of crime that has to be committed in order for it to be reported on? Because I know that just from like communicating with other residents, a lot of us are really upset. We had to turn to the hatchet like 2 or 3 days later. So it was just kind of really troubling because a lot of things happened on the floor that I do live on, like apparently like right outside my door. I had no idea. So what kind of like crimes or, like I understand he was arrested and he was like no longer a threat,
Yes.
but it was just really troubling not knowing that this had gone on while I was like in my room with my door unlocked.
Sure, I'll take that one. When the Clery Act came out, you know, they told us that it should be, for a crime on campus, it should be reported to the police and it should represent an ongoing threat. And as you say, when we arrested that individual, there was no longer a need for us to put out a timely warning. We make 50 to 60 criminal arrests on campus every year, and one of the things we don't want to do is we don't want to put out so many alerts that they become meaningless. We don't want to be the boy who cried wolf, where every other day you're seeing an alert and you come to the point where you might ignore them. When we send you an alert, we want you to read it. Since I've been here in September of 2010, I think we've put out 15 or 16 in that time, thereabouts. And with that number, that average is a little over one a month. That should be something that every student, staff, and faculty member that gets that alert, that should be something that they really read. And now with the great new texting service that we've got, no longer is it going to say info mail up front, GW alert. When you see that, you need to read it.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other thing too is we have a daily crime log that you can go on our website and it'll tell you what's occurred in those different types of things. Now the Hatchet publishes it as well, but you can do that every day, and that's updated every day on our website.
Great. Well, let me go ahead and ask one final question that was submitted online, and I think it's a nice summary question. Are we safe at GW?
You know, as a guy who has this in his title, I think that we are safe as we can possibly be. I am comfortable that we have processes in place, we have resources, we have trained people, we're working with the community, that's why we're here. And I think at the end of the day, that's the best you can do. I can't guarantee 100% of the time that we won't have crime. No one can guarantee that. That's not the world we live in. But I think what I can guarantee is that we'll work hard, we'll continue to take a look at what we're doing, we'll continue to make sure that our people are trained, we'll continue to make sure that we have the right policies in place and that those policies are being enforced and so on and so forth. We'll continue to work with our partners, particularly Metropolitan Police Department, with Homeland Security and Emergency Management on big events, with our partners in this area and those things like that, to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to leverage our resources, coordinate our actions, and making sure that we're on top of things that are going on. And I think that's what we're doing. I think this is an extension of that. This is what we want to do. A member of my staff asked me today, is this something, this type of forum that we want to do on a regular basis? I would throw that question out to you all. You know, I think this is useful. I think I've heard some things today that I think that we can take back and incorporate in what we're doing and some of the things we've got online. So that's what I can say. So I think the campus is safe. Again, and I think that we're working hard to do everything we can to continue that.
Well, I want to thank everyone for their participation this evening here in our live studio audience and joining us on the web. I really appreciate all the engaging questions and also the feedback, as Vice President Darnell mentioned. So I do just want to take a moment I'm sorry, I was going to have the contact information be put back up there, which I do not have access to right now. But just a reminder, on their website, we also have 2 Twitter folks that you can follow, both at GW Darrell ID and GW Peter K. Oh, no, sorry. GW Darrell D and GW Peter K. And again, thank you for joining us, and make sure you stop by, for those of you who are here in person, in the lobby, and pick up those safety and security related materials that George has shown. Thank you again.